Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 10 important articles. So let's cover them in a detailed manner. We'll go beyond the articles and cover these topics comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. But before we start, I have a very important announcement. Now that UPSC notification has come out, many students have been confused about how to fill the form. So to help those aspirants, Unacademy is providing free guidance sessions so that all your doubts regarding form filling can be clarified by our experts. And you also get assistance to prepare for the upcoming prelims examination. So, those interested, please click on the Google form, which is provided in the description box below. Enter your details, and our team will get in touch with you to guide you with regard to the filling of the application form. And now that the notification is out, this is also the right time to scale up your prelims preparation. So if you're looking to enroll for our classes, this would be the right opportunity as Unacademy is providing a flat 50% off on our IAS courses. The subscription is available at just 19,999 and this offer I'm told ends today on the 8th of February. So if you avail within the offer period, you will not only get the 50% discount, you will also get a 6-month free extension on your subscription. So those interested, please click on the link provided in the description. And to avail the offer, you need to enter the code IAS English. So please check out the link provided in the description below for further details. And if you want the PDF of the Hindu analysis, please join our official Telegram channel by scanning the QR code on your screen. After the session ends, we will be sharing the PDF over here. So let's get started and look at the first topic. In today's newspaper, we have multiple articles related to the interim trade agreement that has been announced between India and United States. In fact, over the last few days, there has been a lot of buzz in the world of geopolitics regarding this trade agreement, which has been apparently finalized between India and United States. Initially, we got few statements from the United States, including the social media posts of Donald Trump. Later, a clarification from the Indian side, including statements by India's Prime Minister. But now, the final details have emerged. India US have issued a joint statement that provides more clarity on this trade agreement. Because without the details, there was a lot of speculation as to what exactly was part of this trade deal which had been agreed to between the two countries. So now that we have all these updates, let's take a detailed look at this topic and understand the importance of the interim trade agreement, which India US are going to sign very soon. Reports are indicating by next month, that is in March 2026, most likely this trade agreement will be officially signed and very soon it will take full effect in order to enable free trade and better trade opportunities between both the sides. So under the interim trade agreement, the primary issue has been the tariffs, especially the 50% tariff that United States had levied on Indian exports. Out of these 50% tariffs, 25% tariffs were levied by the US as part of the enhanced tariff measures, along with a 25% penalty tariff on India for continuing to import Russian oil in violation of American and Western sanctions. So cumulatively, the tariffs on Indian exports into US market stood at 50%. This had decimated Indian exports to the US, which is a critical export market. US is one of our top two trading partners along with China, and such a key market had been essentially compromised for Indian exports with serious consequences for Indian industries and Indian agriculture, especially sectors like textiles, pharmaceuticals. They all took a massive hit over the last few months due to the imposition of these 50% tariffs. Now, according to the final details of this agreement, which has been revealed to the public domain, the 50% tariff from the American side will now drop to an effective 18% tariff. The 25% penalty tariff for importing Russian oil is going to be scrapped, as Donald Trump has claimed that India has committed to stop buying Russian oil. Though there has been no official clarification from the Indian side in this regard, US is claiming that India is committed to stop buying Russian oil, and as a result, the penalty tariffs are likely to be removed, hopefully by next week itself. And out of the remaining 25% tariffs, there is a reduction being seen, which will bring it down to 18%. And this places India in the same league as other Asian countries like Vietnam, Philippines, even South Korea, and the others, who also enjoy a similar tariff regime with regard to the trade partnership with the United States. But however, what's important here is that we need to analyze what sectors will benefit, what sectors might face challenges, because there has been a lot of criticism against the trade agreement. It's been alleged by the opposition, by the critics, that the government of India has fallen under Trump's blackmailing tactics, that India's strategic autonomy is being compromised, India's foreign policy interest is being compromised, and India is essentially submitting to the demands and the whims and fancies of President Trump. So this remains a strong criticism against the trade agreement. Serious concern has been expressed about its impact on Indian agriculture, on India's MSME sector as well, as India is likely to throw open its markets for greater American exports into the Indian market. So, what is India offering in return? And what would India stand to gain? That is the analysis that we need to carry out. So, let's take the help of the official document that was released yesterday, the India US joint statement on the interim trade agreement. And let's further understand the details. See, last year, India US started the negotiations for a bilateral trade agreement. The talks began, and there have been several roadblocks as the talks have progressed. Of course, the 50% tariff itself became one of the biggest roadblock, which almost hit Indian exports into the US market. We have even seen a significant decline in Indian exports over the last few months. But both sides, the negotiators, they've managed to overcome the differences, the friction, the tensions, and they have managed to strike the interim trade agreement, which is going to take effect partly from next week. Because, see, on the American side, they just have to sign an executive order. The US president has to sign an executive order which will remove some of these tariffs that were imposed on India. The 25% penalty tariff on India for buying Russian oil was imposed through a presidential order. Even the 25% tariff that was levied on Indian exports, that was also through an executive order. So, with the signing of a new executive order by the US president, most likely this relief for Indian exports will take effect by next week itself. But, however, on the Indian side, the tariff reduction that India is promising to US exports and other benefits India is looking to offer, we are promising some tariff and non tariff measures to facilitate greater American exports into India. These measures will not take effect immediately. Why? Because the formal agreement will have to be signed. The formal agreement will have to be signed, which is likely to happen next month in March 2026. So once the formal agreement is in place, hopefully by end of March, by April, India would also start delivering on these commitments. But it is expected that if everything goes according to plan, by next week, the American tariffs on India would come down to 18%, which would significantly help Indian export and as well as several key industries in India. Now, when you look at the joint statement, if you specifically look at agriculture sector, what is India offering to the US in the agriculture sector? Would it compromise the interests of Indian farmers? How would Indian agriculture gain with regard to exports into the US? That is something we need to really focus upon. So, as part of the interim trade agreement, India has agreed to open up the agriculture sector for specific goods and commodities. For example, India would be bringing down tariffs and even be providing duty free access to certain American agricultural products, such as dried distillers' grains, red sorghum, which is primarily used for animal feed, and as well as tree nuts, some of the fresh processed fruit, soybean oil, wines and spirits, etc. In these specific identified areas, only for these specific products, India would be reducing the tariffs or it would be eliminating the tariffs entirely, giving duty free access to these American agro products into the Indian market. But however, sensitive sectors, sensitive products and commodities, they are being fully protected from the Indian side. Sensitive sectors like meat, dairy, then as well as with regard to certain vegetables and fruits, for example, onion, potatoes, or even processed variants of these fruits and vegetables. They receive full protection from the Indian side. There would be no reduction in tariffs or duty free access for these protected sensitive products. This ensures that the interest of the Indian farmers is protected. It will ensure that we don't see a flood of American agro products which could overwhelm the domestic producers in India. So only in selected areas the tariffs are being reduced or it's being eliminated altogether so that it benefits American agro industry as well. And at the same time, sensitive products and sectors are being protected with higher tariffs so that the domestic interests of Indian farmers can be taken care of. Now, if you look at other important industrial products, take, for example, automotive and automobile products. India will enjoy reduced tariffs in this sector with some possibility of zero tariffs as well, which could help the export of auto products and auto components from India to the United States. Similar relief is being provided for the aircraft industry as well. So, the aircraft industry and even the auto component automobile industry, especially those in the MSME sector, they will stand to benefit with reduced tariffs and even duty free access for certain components. And this could significantly boost Indian exports into the US. Similar benefits are extended to the pharma sector as well. Pharmaceuticals for few generic medicines, and as well as in gems and jewelry, then leather, some varieties of plastic and wood. All these sectors will almost receive duty free access into the American market, provided if certain standards and conditions are met. So, this will significantly increase Indian exports into the US, creating numerous job opportunities in India, especially in the MSME sector for micro, small, medium enterprises. This could present a great opportunity to tap the massive American market and boost Indian exports into the US. So there are certain trade-offs involved. Of course, any trade agreement is essentially a compromise. So according to the government, this is a very well-balanced trade agreement, which takes care of the core interests of India's MSME industry and farmers while creating export opportunities. So the government has said that this trade agreement will also consist of rules of origin requirement to ensure that no third party can misuse the trade agreement. The benefits would be restricted to Indian producers and American producers. There would be rules of origin requirement where the products will have to be produced, assembled within these countries in order to enjoy the benefits of the tariff reduction. So, products produced in a third country, which is tried to be routed through, let's say, India, US to make use of the trade agreement, they will not enjoy the benefits because the rules of origin requirement will ensure to filter out the third party products coming from third countries. So this ensures that the trade agreement largely benefits the Indian industry and the American industry and not any third country. This is primarily designed to keep out countries like China and others, which often tend to misuse such trade agreements in order to route their products and dump their goods on other countries. So there is a rules of origin clause which is included, and now the talks will continue in order to finalize a full-fledged bilateral trade agreement. Throughout the year, the talks are likely to continue to finalize a bilateral trade agreement, which would bring in place a free trade agreement in place between India and United States. But look at the benefits that accrue to the pharma industry. India is considered as the pharmacy of the world, particularly with regard to generic medicines and vaccines. And US can be a very huge market. So a new opening is being created for India's pharma industry, which is hugely beneficial. The same goes for gems and jewelry and leather, and even for plastic and wood industry. These are all labor intensive sectors. More than machinery, they rely heavily on manual labor. If you take textiles and garments, India is one of the world's largest exporter of textile garments and apparel. Here we face a stiff competition with other countries like Bangladesh, Philippines, and Vietnam. Now, with India enjoying a preferential treatment with 18% tariffs, you can see a significant boost for Indian garment, apparel, and textile exports into the US market, which is one of the biggest consumer when it comes to textile and apparel industry. So this is going to boost job opportunities in India, directly translate into lakhs of jobs, and that is something India is looking to benefit from. Then, if you look at information communication technology and other high end technology, India requires some of the products from the US, and we want to create an opening where American tech industry can also benefit. So, for example, GPUs, graphic processing units, which are needed for building your AI infrastructure. Then the infrastructure for data centers, which is absolutely essential to focus on artificial intelligence and critical emerging technologies. This is where India is creating an opening for American tech industry to capitalize on the opportunities in the Indian market to export technological products, IT goods and products into the Indian domain. And benefits are being offered with regard to reduced tariffs for the entry of American tech goods and products into the Indian market. So both the governments are considering this to be a win-win deal for both the sides. The other important point you need to note down is that India has taken a commitment to provide up to $500 billion worth of investments into the US over a period of few years, over a period of 5 years, to be precise, in important sectors like energy and high end technology as well. India is likely to make procurements of US coking coal, US shale reserves, and as well as US aircraft components and other technological products which are required for the Indian industry. And this will translate into significant investments into the United States. But whether these investments will be realized or not, that's a different matter altogether. But a commitment has been taken up from the Indian side that over the next 5 years, in a phased manner, in important sectors like aerospace industry, even agriculture and pharma, then tech industry, and as well as with regard to artificial intelligence, India is likely to make huge procurements and investments. And the main focus here would be definitely the energy sector, where India would be looking to pick up oil and gas from the US market and make investments in the coking coal sector of the US. And this is where India US partnership could be taken to the next level. So while the government defends these provisions and the government claims that these provisions are mutually beneficial, there is a lot of skepticism, there is a lot of concern, there's a lot of criticism and opposition also which is coming up. So the Union Minister Piyush Goyal has clarified that the government has taken utmost care to protect the Indian farmers. That's why specific goods and commodities have been excluded in the agriculture and food sector. If you look at food processing industry, certain varieties of processed food like gherkins, mushrooms, or dried onion and garlic powder, such products have been specifically excluded, and these commodities are being protected in order to protect the Indian farmers. Dairy meat industry is being fully protected as these are very sensitive, and you can't throw open small marginal farmers of India to compete with the agro giants and the food processing giants of United States. So the government is very confident that Indian farmers will remain protected when it comes to some of the sensitive products while creating opportunities for Indian agro and food exports into the US. As pointed out by the minister, India's key agro exports will enjoy duty free access into the US market. For example, spices, tea, coffee, and even coconut oil. India is a leading exporter of these agro and food commodities. And India will be getting duty free access for these products, which will immensely benefit Indian farmers. So the government is very confident that it will not hurt the interests of the Indian farmers. Rather, Indian farmers will benefit by increasing their exports into the US market. Then, if you look at what United States is claiming about India agreeing to stop buying Russian oil, there is no official word from the Indian side. Even if you look at joint statement, there is no reference in the joint statement with regard to India having agreed to this commitment. But however, it's being widely reported, Donald Trump himself has claimed that Prime Minister Modi has guaranteed that India would stop buying Russian oil entirely in order to evade these tariffs. Similar commitments are being made with regard to any trade with Iran. India had anyway zeroed out oil imports from Iran since 2018. Even then, it was under the pressure of the Trump administration. It was primarily under the threat of American tariffs that India had zeroed out oil imports from Iran. But now Iran has attracted a 25% additional tariff. After the recent protests in Iran, US has imposed 25% additional tariffs on countries that are trading with Iran. So India is willing to go that extra step, take that extra mile in order to ensure that our trade and foreign policy aligns with America's national security priorities. So this could end up compromising our ties with Iran and Russia. See, India, in the recent budget, it has completely dropped any allocation for the Chabahar port in Iran. If you saw the recent budget that was presented by the government, for the first time, India has made zero allocation for the Shahid Beheshti terminal at Chabahar port in Iran. The Chabahar port has been a strategic project for India, which we have pursued for more than 2 decades. It is vital for us to link with Afghanistan and Central Asia. And India looks at Chabahar as a strategic investment to counter Pakistan, China, and other core threats, and also achieve some of our strategic interests in the region. India has made millions of dollars of investments in Chabahar port. Previously, we had got an exemption from the United States from the American sanctions on Iran. But now, India seems to be aligning with the sanctions regime of the US, and the zero allocation made in the budget, the no allocation that you see in this budget for Chabahar port, is a clear sign from India that we are willing to align our trade and foreign policy with the national security priorities of the United States. While this alignment is appreciated by some, there are some experts who are critical of this. Several former diplomats, retired IFS officers, they have come out the open and publicly condemned the Modi government for compromising on the principle of strategic autonomy, which has been the foundational principle of India's foreign policy. So, well known former diplomats like Kanwal Sibal, they have criticized this move of India, that India has succumbed to American pressure and blackmailing tactics. Because generally, India has stood up against such bullying tactics and pressure points, which we have often faced from US, Europe, and other Western powers. So India had compromised in a similar manner in 2018 as well, under the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, when we zeroed out oil imports from Iran. This had already impacted India's ties with Iran. Now, with India cutting any investment in Chabahar port and most likely making a commitment to stop procuring Russian oil, this could fundamentally alter India's approach in foreign policy, as it could affect India's independent approach towards its foreign relations. So, this is one of the criticisms which is coming up. But again, only time will tell whether it would compromise India's core foreign policy interests. Has India succumbed to American pressure and Trump's bullying tactics? Will the trade agreement really benefit India as well? Or will there be any consequences, any negative side effects? Only time will tell, because trade agreements, they look great on paper. We have a history of many such trade agreements. Take, for example, the India ASEAN FTA, which was brought into effect from 2010 onwards. When the India ASEAN FTA was finalized, even then there was a lot of celebratory mood that it would significantly boost Indian exports and India would stand to gain. But now, when you look back in retrospect, we realize that some of the flaws in the trade agreement led to a compromise on our trade and economic interests. While ASEAN goods flooded the Indian market, Indian exports could not increase, and we have suffered negative consequences of certain FTAs in the past. This also has to do with India's own export competitiveness. Because unless and until our farmers, our industries produce quality goods and capitalize on the opportunities and increase the competitiveness of their goods, you can't really tap the benefits of that trade agreement. Whereas giant American corporations, multinational corporations, which have the bank balance, right, they might take full advantage of these trade provisions. And you might see a flood of the goods, which could affect your domestic interests as well. So only implementation over a period of time will tell us whether the trade agreement has benefited India or not. Of course, any deal would be a compromise, but you can't compromise on your core interests. You can't compromise on core principles. And that's where the criticism comes in. And the opposition, especially, is very critical of the government with regard to the deal, because they still believe that Indian farmers could be threatened, Indian industries could be compromised because of the trade agreement that India has agreed to. But as I said, let's not jump to any short sighted conclusions. Because as of now, on paper at least, now that the details are out in the public, it appears to be a well negotiated agreement. There are some positives for India, especially some sectors in agriculture, some sectors in MSME will definitely benefit. There's no doubt about it. Indian IT exports can increase, India's pharma exports can increase, Indian agrarian exports can increase. And this is very good for job creation in India. But of course, there are some concerns. The $500 billion investment, how would India really bring in such a massive investment? $500 billion is not a small amount, right? In fact, the overall bilateral trade between India and US is roughly around $130 billion. How would India mobilize $500 billion in investments, even if it's over a period of 5 years? Of course, it is phased out. But still, how would India mobilize such massive amount of investments? Does it mean India will be forced to buy expensive American energy supplies and American technology, which might prove to be costlier for India? Will India be forced to splurge money when it can't afford that? Would India be pushed on the same path as, let's say, West Asian powers like Saudi Arabia and others? Even they have been pushed by the Trump administration to make similar commitments. Saudi Arabia, for example, has committed $1 trillion worth of investments. A kingdom like Saudi Arabia would be able to afford it. But would India really benefit from such investments? Would it really protect our economic and foreign policy interests? That's the larger question which comes up. And again, will Indian pharma receive favorable treatment? Because generally American pharma companies have been against the entry of generic drugs from India, which are much cheaper compared to the patented variants. So would there be new form of trade disputes which will come up? And how would those disputes be resolved? Let's say disputes related to intellectual property rights, disputes related to certification, quality control. If these disputes come up, how will the disputes be resolved? There is no clarity regarding this as of now. So there is no dispute resolution mechanism which has been established between India and US to resolve the trade disputes. If they were to approach the WTO again for resolving the trade disputes, this would again end up hampering the trade opportunities. So there are some pitfalls, there are some downsides, but overall it looks to be a well negotiated trade agreement, at least on the face of it. And you need to give it time to take effect. Only then you can judge whether the trade deal has benefited India or has it harmed India. Definitely, with regard to foreign policy principles like strategic autonomy, there seems to be a compromise. But again, it's not the case only with India. Most of the other countries as well, they have been bullied by the Trump administration as the US can cause significant pain, economic and strategic pain to other countries. And it leaves us with very little choice. But at the same time, the question comes up, should India have stood up to the bullying, withstood the economic pain and the economic losses for the necessity of protecting independence in our foreign policy? So that is a difficult choice that was in front of the government of India. And the government has made a clear choice that we will make a compromise, a safe enough compromise where we will give up on certain aspects and certain interests while securing other core interests. So, based on this topic, take up a mains practice question. What we have discussed, please use those points to practice your mains answer writing and post your answers in the comment section below. India's interim trade agreement with the US provides much needed relief for Indian exports, but also raises concerns over domestic industries and India's strategic autonomy. Critically discuss. Now, moving on to the next topic, on page 13, the Hindu carries a detailed article on the AYUSH industry and the support that the government of India is providing to the AYUSH domain, particularly through the union budget. In the recent budget, the government has given a big boost for the AYUSH industry. AYUSH stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. It's a collection of traditional medicinal systems, with some of them rooted in India's ancient civilizational culture. Ayurveda, Yoga, for example, right? They are core aspects of India's ancient tradition and traditional knowledge. And these alternate forms of medicinal systems are widely popular in India and even across the world, wherever Indian diaspora is present. So today, India is looking to tap the opportunity and scale up the Ayush industry and formalize the Ayurveda and yoga industry. So there's a lot of support coming in from the government, in fact, from the last few years. The Modi government, back in 2014-15, set up a dedicated ministry of Ayush. ensuring that there is high level focus on the Ayush domain. There is a lot of budgetary commitment that the government has made. In fact, if you look at the last year's budget, around 3,900 crores was committed in the 2024-25 budget. But if you compare this with the current budget, the 25-26 budget, you see a big jump taking place, almost up to 4,400 crores, a significant jump of nearly 400 to 450 crores in the budgetary allocation. So, this jump in budgetary allocation itself is a clear sign that the government is prioritizing the Ayush sector. In fact, in some of the new FTAs that we are signing, the recent FTA we signed with European Union, the FTA we signed with New Zealand and Oman, in all these FTAs, there are specific provisions to benefit the Ayush sector, to boost India's Ayurveda exports and other traditional medicinal exports to these markets, which includes developed markets like Europe and New Zealand. So, India is looking to focus on the export potential of traditional medicinal products. And in fact, this is expected to be a massive industry, a $26 billion industry in the coming years. So there is a great deal of economic opportunity available, which can benefit the Ayurvedic practitioners in the country, the practitioners of alternate medicinal systems. And this could benefit Indian farmers and as well as tribal communities by creating alternate sources of income for them. Because the core ingredients which are used in Ayurvedic drugs and medicines, they are primarily medicinal plants, medicinal herbs, which are cultivated by tribal communities and farmers. In fact, our indigenous communities, they hold on to traditional knowledge, knowledge which is passed down generations after generation for many centuries. This is exactly what goes into the making of some of these medicines and drugs. So, any boost in the export potential and the trade opportunities and the streamlining of this industry will directly benefit the farmers in the tribal communities which cultivate these medicinal plants or which hold the traditional knowledge of manufacturing and producing these traditional medicines. So, this jump in budgetary allocation is a welcome step. It shows the priority the government is providing to promote Ayush not just in India but across the world. We even have bilateral agreements with countries like Mauritius and others in order to promote Ayush forms of medicine and increase the export opportunity. So, the inclusion of Ayush exports under the free trade agreements with European Union, New Zealand, and Oman is indeed a great step. This could further boost the domestic Ayurvedic industry and the alternate medicinal industry in the country. Now, let's see what exactly is India doing. What is India's plan? What initiatives are being sponsored through the budget? In the union budget, the finance minister has announced the establishment of aims like institutions for Ayurveda. All India Institutes of Ayurveda will come up. There's already one such facility which has come up in New Delhi. These are aims like institutions. It functions as a premier specialty hospital treating the patients and as a research center and an educational center as well, where medical education would be offered to students along with focus on research, development, and innovation. So, aims like Ayurveda institutions are coming up. Three such centers are being funded through this budget. Three All India Institutes of Ayurveda are coming up, and India is going to upgrade the WHO Traditional Medicinal Center in Jamnagar in Gujarat. India, along with the World Health Organization, have recently established the Global Traditional Medicine Center in Jamnagar, and India is looking to upgrade this facility so that we can bring more global validity and accreditation to alternate systems of medicine and give it more global recognition as well. Because generally, when it comes to traditional medicinal systems, it runs in conflict with allopathy, and there is a lot of safety concerns, efficacy concerns, and there's also a lot of opposition and hesitation which comes from the scientific community when it comes to adopting alternate forms of medicine. So, to address this dilemma, India would be collaborating with WHO and upgrading the Global Traditional Medicine Center in order to raise the profile of traditional medicinal systems, make it more acceptable, streamline the research, focus on scientific validation, and ensure that it reaches on par with allopathic forms of medicine. India is also increasing the budget for the National AYUSH mission. There is a dedicated national mission which the Modi government had launched. So there is a 66% jump in the budgetary allocation for this mission. Now, National AYUSH mission has a substantial budget of 1,300 crores. So this will ensure that in all the leading public healthcare facilities in India, Ayurvedic clinics and facilities will also be set up. Ayurvedic drugs would be made more easily available. So it would help modernize Ayush related hospitals, dispensaries, pharmacies, place Ayush clinics in existing modern hospitals. The government run public funded hospitals will have dedicated Ayush divisions. And there will be more focus on capacity building, training, education, establishing new laboratories for drug testing. Because one major concern with traditional medicine is that quite often these medicines are contaminated, especially with heavy metals like lead, mercury, sometimes even arsenic. Such deadly contamination is quite common in traditional medicines, including in Ayurveda. In fact, uh, recently in Australia and New Zealand, health alerts and advisories were issued by those governments flagging the high uh, content of heavy metal and other adulterants and contaminants in Ayurvedic medicines and drugs that had been exported from India. So this even brings a bad name for the industry and it could cripple the export potential and the trade opportunities. So there is a need to ensure safe drugs are produced and all the standards are followed. The drug safety, the drug efficacy is ensured. So for that, you need testing centers, research labs, and you need certification facilities, standardization facilities. And that is exactly what India is looking to create. India is looking to fund an entire ecosystem of research centers, training facilities, education initiatives under the National Ayush Mission. India is even rolling out a AI based platform called Bharat Vistar, which will provide real time alerts and updates to farmers who are cultivating medicinal plants and medicinal herbs. This AI platform, it is designed to be a multilingual platform which will provide knowledge, scientific knowledge to the farmers and real time updates as to what kind of medicinal plants and herbs can be cultivated. So, this creates a great economic opportunity for farmers to earn an alternate income. And it also ensures adequate supply of these essential ingredients and raw materials for the Ayush industry. And it further boosts the export potential which is available in this market. So, in the recent budget, a lot of new initiatives have been taken up, be it the establishment of aims like institutions, the increased funding for National Ayush Mission, and as well as the upgradation of the WHO Global uh, Traditional Medicine Center in Jamnagar. Now, the EU FTA, which has specific provisions related to Ayush, you can see similar provisions in the FTA with New Zealand and Oman as well, as I told you. We have bilateral agreements with countries like Mauritius, with Trinidad, Tobago, with Guyana, and few African countries as well, where India is actively pushing Ayush as part of its diplomacy. So this has become part of India's soft power, cultural diplomacy, and economic diplomacy, where we are looking to create markets for Ayush products. So, in developed countries of the European Union, the problem was alternate systems of medicine were not accepted due to the lack of scientific validation and also the mix up of quack medicine and the quackery which comes with adulterated medicines. This had created a bad reputation for alternate forms of medicine. And for example, let's say Ayurvedic practitioner in India who might have studied and obtained a degree, their degrees were not considered valid in developed countries in Europe. Now, this problem is being addressed through this FTA, where Indian Ayurvedic practitioners, their degrees will get recognized in the EU market. So now they can set up clinics, they can practice medicine in the European market in any of the 27 European countries, creating a great work opportunity for Ayush practitioners from India. Those who have graduated in India in the domain of Ayush with a degree, their degrees were not previously recognized. So through the new FTA, once it takes full effect, Ayush practitioners from India, their degrees will get recognition in the EU market, meaning they can practice in European Union and set up these wellness centers, medical centers, and start increasing the popularity of Ayush forms of medicine. Given the large size of the Indian diaspora and the Indian community, there will be a ready market available, and you can further scale this up to the global audience as well. Then, under the FTA, European Union has agreed to accept the safety standards and the test results from Indian laboratories. So, Ayurvedic drugs, AYUSH medicines, which are tested in India, lab certified in India, those certifications and standards will now be acceptable in the EU market. So, EU customs, they will not block the entry of AYUSH products from India once the trade agreement goes into full effect. So, this will open up the EU market for India's AYUSH exports. And the EU has also recognized the TKDL, the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library of India, which is a digital database that we have created for indigenous traditional knowledge, where civilizational knowledge held by tribal communities, indigenous people, is being documented and digitized. This will help in safeguarding our intellectual property rights. Tomorrow, let's say a European pharma company or a biotech company, if they try to engage in biopiracy and if they try to pirate, let's say, a traditional medicinal system which is rooted in Indian civilization, in Indian culture, India can counter those claims, claim IP rights by using the data which is digitized on the TKDL platform, which is now recognized by the European Union under the Free Trade Agreement. So, all these benefits will translate into great opportunities for the Ayush industry. In fact, in the Ayush sector, there are plenty of resources available in the country today. The government of India has dedicated schemes and missions which are well funded. Along with the National Ayush Mission, there are several autonomous organizations, scientific bodies which are funded and set up by the government. There are institutes of national importance, including the All India Institute of Ayurveda, which is already functioning in New Delhi. Three more such aims like centers are being funded through the current budget. The National Institute of Homeopathy in Kolkata has been pioneering research in the field of homeopathy. We have a pharmacopoeia commission for establishing drug standards for traditional medicine and homeopathy, which helps in bringing the standards to the global levels which are expected. We also have a national commission for Indian system of medicine and a national commission for homeopathy, along with a national medicinal plants board, which is streamlining the entire Ayush sector. The National Medicinal Plants Board, it works with the related state level boards run by the state governments, which works with farmers to cultivate medicinal plants in the country to create the raw materials needed for Ayush medicines. So, India has a very formidable architecture today. There are institutions which are operating, from medical colleges to research institutions to labs, diagnostic facilities, a lot of pharma companies. They are producing Ayush based medicines and drugs, and an entire ecosystem is now being put in place by India. There is a dedicated scheme and yojana, the Ayur Gyan, which focuses on education and capacity building, and the Ayur Swasthya Yojana, which focuses on using traditional medicine for achieving community health goals. This is even aligned with the National Health Mission and the goals in the public health sector. So, this streamlining of alternate medicine into the mainstream is something that can create opportunities for the entire Ayush sector, create jobs. And as I said, this is expected to be a $26 billion industry, which can create lakhs of jobs in India as well. But however, the concerns related to it have to be addressed. For example, if you look at any form of alternate medicine, traditional medicine, it runs in contrast with modern medicine, which is your allopathic medicinal system. Modern medicinal systems are rigorously tested, scientifically validated. There are rigorous standards, drug testing protocols which are followed for every allopathic drug for it to be developed and introduced in the market. It has to undergo very rigorous trials through RCTs, randomized controlled trials. Whereas such rigorous testing doesn't exist for alternate medicinal systems. And also, as I said, most of the knowledge is undocumented, it's passed down generations after generations. There isn't enough research and development, there isn't enough documentation. A lot of quacks also operate in the sector, right? Those who have limited skills, limited training, even they claim to be practitioners of these alternate medicinal systems, leading to quackery, which brings a bad name to the entire sector as well. So this is the challenge that India is trying to address. But one concern is the push of the central government and state governments to give the same recognition for Ayurvedic practitioners as that of a allopathic doctor. Recently, the government made a move to recognize Ayurvedic doctors on par with allopathic doctors, recognize them as surgeons, allowing them to carry out surgeries as well. Now, this was a very controversial move, which has been challenged by the allopathic practitioners. There are cases pending in front of the Supreme Court because Ayush practitioners, they have no training in surgery. While they do practice alternate forms of medicine, which is mainly focused on preventive strategies, they can't actively intervene through surgeries and deal with serious complications where tertiary level health facilities are required. State governments and central government, they are looking at this as an easy solution. Due to the huge doctor shortage in India, they are looking to recognize Ayurvedic doctors on par with medical doctors and give them the same recognition and permit them to carry out surgeries as well. So this is where India is risking uh, bringing more criticism, right? And it could unnecessarily affect the opportunities we are trying to create for Ayush products. Ayush products, they do have a certain niche area as a preventive medicine and healthcare, but it can't be an active intervention, especially when tertiary healthcare is needed, when advanced surgeries are needed, advanced rigorous scientific procedures are needed. That is something which should be left to the domain of allopathic medicine. So it's about achieving that harmony between two contradicting streams of medicine. That is something the government should focus upon when it comes to the domain of Ayush, while ensuring the quacks are filtered out, while ensuring adulteration is tackled, because the presence of heavy metal contamination is a very serious concern. The presence of lead and mercury is a very, very serious health concern. So these are the issues which need to be tackled while we streamline Ayush, and that's where the opportunities can be created. So based on this, please take up a mains question. Given how much focus the government is placing on Ayush, you can expect a mains question on this topic. And you should be aware of the initiatives the government of India has taken, the budgetary support the government has planned, and what challenges lie ahead. So now moving on to the third topic on page 15, there's an article that focuses on the upcoming elections in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, which has seen a lot of turmoil since 2024, is finally slated to hold the next elections. And this is something which could have a big impact on India, on India's interests and South Asian geopolitics. See, until 2024 August, India had a friendly leader under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina when her party Awami League was in power. India's core geopolitical interests were protected by the Sheikh Hasina's government. But with the toppling of Sheikh Hasina's regime, led by student protesters and radical groups, and the interim regime which has taken shape under Muhammad Yunus, Bangladesh has increasingly become hostile to India. It has courted closer ties with India's rivals like Pakistan, Turkey, even China, creating security challenges and strategic threats. Along with that, the emergence of radical forces, be it the Jamaat or the National Citizens Party, the students led party, where radical student leaders have been issuing open threats against India. This has raised very serious concerns for us, and the close links of Jamaat, the Jamaat-e-Islami, with Pak based radical groups and terror organizations is something that has always worried India. And apart from all the security concerns and the border related challenges, the main concern for us has been how Bangladesh has been treating its minorities, how religious minorities have been targeted, persecuted by radical fundamentalist forces in Bangladesh. Since 2024, there have been repeated attacks on minority groups. See, Bangladesh is a very diverse society, and 10% of its population is made up of religious minorities, primarily Bengali Hindus, and as well as few Buddhists and Christians. The repeated attacks on religious minorities in Bangladesh is something that worries India. As you are aware, recently there have been incidents of targeted attacks on Hindu temples, Hindu festivals. There have been mob lynching incidents where Hindu minorities have been targeted, lynched, burnt alive. Such horrific incidents have taken place. That is something which concerns India. This is not just about religion, it's about human rights. It's about what India has always stood for. So India has been pressurizing the Muhammad Yunus regime to ensure that these people are held accountable for committing these atrocities and minorities are protected. So now that Bangladesh is heading for elections, such violence is likely to escalate. Usually, during cycles of election, Bangladesh has often seen targeted violence against minorities. This is nothing new. It used to happen even under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, where minority groups were often targeted. So, this is something India is insisting upon. As Bangladesh is gearing up for the upcoming elections, we want the elections to be free and fair. A level playing field should be given to all the political parties, including the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Though India is not trying to push the Awami League, which is now a banned organization, we are at least hoping other legitimate parties like BNP are given a fair chance. Because of late, political violence has escalated between the party workers of Jamaat-e-Islami and the party workers of BNP. So, the large scale political violence and the targeting of religious minorities is something that really worries India about the upcoming election cycle in Bangladesh. So India is closely watching the developments, but the Mohammad Yunus regime, it has tried to shed its responsibility. They have documented some of the violent incidents in the last few months, and out of the hundreds of incidents recorded, Bangladeshi interim regime is saying that only few of them, just a handful of them, have a communal angle to them, meaning it's writing off other incidents as regular incidents of crime, and it's not taking any responsibility for these incidents. It's washing off its hands, and that is what really concerns India. So, this election cycle would probably be one of the most important for India as well, because this would decide the fate of Bangladesh. Whether the Jamaat would manage to storm to power, the pro Pakistan Jamaat e Islami, which is linked with radical terror groups, or would the BNP manage to come stronger, or would the National Citizens Party manage to create a dent and form a coalition with Jamaat or let's say the BNP? These are the outcomes that India is looking for, and it would entirely decide how India would next align with Bangladesh, depending on who's able to win the elections, who's able to form the next government. That will determine the course of India's trajectory regarding how we will engage with Bangladesh. So, this is another key update that you guys should be aware of. We will continue to track the elections in Bangladesh in the coming days. Next, on page 12, on the science and tech page, there's a very interesting article on bamboos. This article helps you understand the ecological, economic, and the cultural importance of bamboo. So let's focus on the topic. It's relevant for prelims and even for mains. The topic can be asked in environment and ecology. So bamboo, which is widely cultivated in India, it has a lot of ecological significance. It has a lot of economic significance, and it has a lot of cultural, nutritional significance as well. The bamboo, they basically thrive in tropical climates. In a tropical country like India, bamboo can flourish, especially there are few states like Assam, Manipur, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, which are the leading bamboo cultivators. And they thrive in tropical climate. They need a warm, moist environment with bright sunlight, and there should be sufficient organic matter in the soil. These are the perfect ideal conditions for bamboo cultivation. Bamboo grows in the wild as well, but it is cultivated by farmers as well, particularly in Northeast India. Northeastern states are one of the leading producers of bamboo, and it has a lot of cultural, economic, nutritional significance, ecological significance. It's a very sustainable alternative where several harmful industrial goods and components can be replaced with bamboo variants, which can help tackle pollution. It plays a key role in biodiversity as well of native ecosystems. Tribal indigenous communities are dependent on it, right? And it has great nutritional significance as a rich source of food with a lot of nutritional benefits. And that's the virtue of bamboo that you need to note down. So, bamboo, since ancient times, has been consumed as food. If you look at ancient epics of India, they refer to bamboo based food which is prepared, which is supposed to be rich in nutrition, which was consumed by monks and even by those who are exiled into forests. So, traditional tribal indigenous communities have always relied on bamboo, especially the bamboo shoots, even bamboo seeds and leaves, and they've used it as a rich source of nutrition. So this is something which is well documented since ancient times in India. And today the leading producers of bamboo are the northeastern states of Assam, Tripura, and Mizoram. Along with that, we have Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and the states in Western Ghats, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. These are the leading producers of bamboo. As I told you, they thrive in a tropical, humid environment. They require a moist condition with good, bright sunlight throughout the year, along with rich organic matter present in the soil. Under these ideal conditions, the bamboo forest will thrive, and there is a lot of indigenous value and economic value attached to it. It's one of the most resilient species which can be cultivated, which can help counter the effects of global warming, desertification as well. There are a lot of species which depend directly, indirectly on bamboos, right? It has a lot of ecological contribution to make. Now, when you look at the nutritional value, bamboo is said to be very rich in essential amino acids and even few important vitamins like vitamin A, B6, and E. It is known to regulate your blood glucose levels, does help in fighting against diabetes, also help in tackle your lipid levels to help deal with cardiovascular conditions. So regular bamboo consumption has been directly linked with these health benefits. It's seen as a superfood. So now India is focusing on branding bamboo based food products as a superfood for the global market. If you look at many tribal communities, if you're from Northeast India or Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, you would know that bamboo in fermented form is consumed, usually as a pickle. Bamboo shoot is pickled and it acts as a probiotic. It has probiotic effects on the gut, improving the gut microbiome, and it directly translates into significant health benefits. It's also said to be very high in antioxidants. So the government is having a dedicated mission to promote the cultivation of bamboo, promote bamboo as a new superfood, and this could be a solution for food security problems as well. Very sustainable, resilient crop. And India has launched a dedicated national bamboo mission in 2025 with sufficient funding to promote the cultivation of bamboo in these particular states. And this can even be a great source for biofuel, for ethanol production. In fact, last year at Numaligarh in Assam, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated a biorefinery that is producing ethanol from bamboo bio waste. So there are numerous benefits. Bamboo is used as a raw material in multiple industries for making baskets, furniture, for various goods and commodities which are produced by indigenous tribal communities. So bamboo based products are not only sustainable and environment friendly, they are also a lucrative economic opportunity. That is something the governments are trying to leverage. The state governments are working with the center under the National Bamboo Mission to encourage farmers and promote the cultivation, promote greater research, and bring them into the markets, bring the products into the markets, and create the export potential as well. Because these products have a great export potential because of its low environmental footprint, right? It's a much more sustainable alternative. There are musical instruments made from bamboo, furniture which is produced, even clothing material which is produced from bamboo, which is seen as a very sustainable, clean alternative. And that is the advantage India has because, see, India is one of the leading producers and exporters of bamboo in the world. We are amongst the top three exporters. Please make a note. India is one amongst the top three exporters of bamboo, along with China and Vietnam. India, China, Vietnam, these are the top three exporters of bamboo, and India is right within the top three. So there is a greater potential that exists. We can tap the markets in Africa, Latin America, in Europe, or in other developed markets, right, and create a great export potential. So that is the virtue of bamboo that you should be aware of. Its ecological role, its economic and cultural significance, and nutritional value. Now, coming to the next topic, a couple of days ago, there was a deadly terror attack in Pakistan where a Shia mosque was targeted in Islamabad. I'm sure many of you would have seen the horrific visuals on social media. In this deadly terror attack, almost 36 people have been killed. And as you can see, the terror attack was aimed at a place of worship. The target was a Shia mosque, and it highlights the status of Shia Muslims in Pakistan. It highlights the internal social divide in Pakistan and the targeting of religious minorities in Pakistan. So, in response, Shia Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir have led protests yesterday calling on Pakistan to protect the religious minorities. Because since the creation of Pakistan, minorities in Pakistan have been under attack, be it Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, or even Muslims like Hazaras, Ahmadiyas, and Shias, and even those Sunnis who don't abide by the rigid, puritanical version of Islam, which is a state propagated, right, which is promoted by radical fundamentalists with the backing of the state. All such minorities are targeted in Pakistan repeatedly. This attack has been claimed by Islamic State. The local branch of ISIS, just calling itself as ISIS Pakistan, it's seen as a faction of, it's seen as one of the factions of ISIS Khorasan. In the Afghanistan Pakistan region, you have a branch of Islamic State called ISIS K. K stands for Khorasan province. This branch of Islamic State wants to capture territory, topple the authorities here, and take over state power to form a Islamic State called the Khorasan province. So one of the known factions, Islamic State in Pakistan, has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, Pakistan, as always, tried deflecting the blame, and it initially blamed India and Afghanistan for sponsoring Islamic State in the region. India obviously rejected these allegations. The Ministry of External Affairs issued a strong statement. Though we sympathized with the victims and condemned the terrorist incident, India retaliated against Pakistan for trying to unnecessarily blame India. Pakistan always has this habit of blaming every attack in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on India and its close links with actors in Afghanistan. India's research and analysis wing often stands accused by Pakistan with no evidence. So India rejects these claims as these are baseless allegations. Pakistan has never been able to provide a shred of evidence to show any Indian involvement in these terror incidents. Now, Pakistan needs to look within instead of blaming India. As I said, Pakistan has cultivated such a rigid version of puritanical religion and used it for radical extremism for state objectives. It has led to the flourishing of these radical groups, which are known to target minorities. And it's not happening for the first time. There's an entire history of 7 decades where minorities have repeatedly been targeted in the country. So, this is one such incident that highlights the vulnerability of Shia Muslims in Pakistan. Next, moving on to topic number 6, a very big development from Northeast India. The Modi government has struck a tripartite agreement with the government of Nagaland along with a civil society group that represents the interests of the Naga people in eastern Nagaland, known as the NPO. These three stakeholders, the government of India, represented by Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal ministry for these matters, the state government of Nagaland, and the civil society representative of the Naga people in Eastern Nagaland, the ENPO, ENPO, the Eastern Nagaland People's Organization. The ENPO is a very well known civil society outfit, and it's been fighting for the political rights of the tribal groups in Eastern Nagaland. So, in Eastern Nagaland, there are 6 specific districts where you find 8 distinct ethnic groups, 8 distinct subgroups of Nagas are found in the eastern districts of Nagaland. And under the banner of NPO, they have been fighting for a statehood movement for many years. They want to basically break this region from the state of Nagaland and they want to form a separate state. So the Eastern Nagaland movement has been led by this organization called NPO, demanding the creation of a separate state to protect the rights of these Naga tribes who are residing in the 6 districts of Eastern Nagaland. Government of India has been in negotiations with them from a long time because the region is prone to insurgency, violence. We have seen such demands for statehood easily turning into a separatist movement and insurgency in the past. So this is not directly connected with Naga insurgency per se. Naga insurgency was led by groups like NSCN, different factions of NSCN, whereas the NPO movement is more of a political movement asking for statehood for the creation of a separate state. So the government of India has partially addressed the demands by agreeing to create local autonomy through a new agreement which has been signed, known as the FNTA Agreement. The Frontier Nagaland Territorial Authority has been established to administer and govern eastern parts of Nagaland. So, with this tripartite agreement, some of the demands of NPO, the people of Eastern Nagaland, has been fulfilled. Their demand was statehood, but the government of India has worked out an alternate arrangement providing some limited autonomy over few specific subjects where the local authority which is being established will handle the administration of these affairs. So the FNTA agreement is a big breakthrough in this regard. It establishes a new authority called the Frontier Nagaland Territorial Authority to govern the eastern part of Nagaland. So this authority will have administrative powers over 6 districts: Tuansang, Mon, Kipfri, Longlang, Noklak, and Shamator. Please make a note of the names of these 6 districts. So administrative powers would be devolved to these districts under the authority. It will have a separate secretariat of its own, and it will be headed by an additional chief secretary, or a principal secretary would be appointed, who would be a senior IAS officer to head this authority, who will look after the administration of this part of Nagaland. Around 46 subjects have been identified from the state and union list. These 46 subjects are now delegated to the local authority, which is the FNTA, which is going to be established. However, this devolution of powers and autonomy which is being provided, it will not compromise the constitutional special status given to Nagaland under Article 371A. I hope you guys are aware, under Article 371A, Nagaland enjoys special protection. The tribal communities, they are given some special rights with regard to their customary rights, their cultural rights, their land and resources. The governor of Nagaland has special powers to look after the tribal welfare in the state as well. So these constitutional powers and special status will not be touched, it will not be compromised. But this local authority, which will be set up, the FNTA, will now administer Eastern Nagaland. These 6 districts will be administered, where 46 subjects will be under the authority of the FNTA. Yeah. So this is a flexible arrangement being provided by the government. Since the demand for statehood cannot be met, limited autonomy is being granted within the existing arrangement. So it will remain part of Nagaland itself, but it will ensure that some of the aspirations of the people of Eastern Nagaland is met. However, NPO, though it has agreed to the deal and welcomed the agreement, they have said they will continue their fight for a statehood. NPO group, they have said that their fight for a different state will carry on. It will not stop. But at least they are happy that the government has shown the willingness to agree for some limited devolution of powers. So this is one route through which India has been able to satisfy the aspirations in Northeast India and deal with different demands and contain insurgencies and security threats. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look and wrap up the class. On page number 10, we have an article that helps us understand the success of India's Cheetah reintroduction program. Cheetahs which had gone extinct on the Indian subcontinent, they are being reintroduced under the ambitious reintroduction program pioneered by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So since 2022, India has reintroduced cheetahs from Africa, from South Africa, from Namibia, right? These countries have primarily helped India to reintroduce cheetahs in the wild. The Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh is the primary habitat. Plus, there are a couple of other sites. Now, can you take this up as an exercise? Can you find out which are the other 2 sites where cheetahs have been reintroduced other than Kuno National Park? Please mention that in the comments. So, the reason why we are talking about this is because the cheetahs that were reintroduced, they have been giving birth. 5 new cheetah cubs have been born, and this takes the total cheetah population in India to 35. This is a quite decent, healthy population. Around 11 cheetahs, adults, were translocated into India. 24 Indian cubs have been born. Some of them have passed away as well. But right now, the population stands at 35, which is a very healthy, decent number, which means that India could probably create a viable cheetah population, which could mark the success of the reintroduction program. The next topic, fungal metabolism. The fungi is one of the most underestimated pathogen. It is one of the least studied, least understood variety of pathogen, which is actually having a very deadly, detrimental effect on human health and even on plant health. Fungal infections, right? Most of them dismiss them. Even the medical industry often tends to dismiss them. But fungal infections can turn super deadly. It can become fatal. It's even expected or predicted by epidemiologists that the next big global pandemic of an apocalyptic scale can be triggered by a possible fungi mutation, right? Because fungi, they are known to be very resilient. The way in which they uh, essentially infect and transmit, and the way in which they can infest into humans and plants, they can trigger a multi-front health crisis. They can not only lead to fatal diseases amongst humans and animals, they can significantly affect plant health. Thus, it can affect biodiversity, it can affect food security. Studies point out a possible risk from fungus, which could threaten global food agriculture, which can threaten global food availability as well, creating a dual front problem. So, in India, a lot of research has focused on the entire mechanics of how a fungus operates, how they can be targeted, how a treatment line can be developed to deal with fungal infections and fungal diseases. The Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, which is based out of Hyderabad, has been pioneering this research. This article is entirely based on this research, which is being carried out by the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. So traditionally, treatment of a fungal disease is targeted through the genetic approach, where the gene networks are targeted to break down the fungi, to limit the spread of the infection. But this is often not seen as a very effective way of tackling a disease. New research has shown some light on how a fungi actually operates. The fungus usually it's categorized into two types. There are two variants. One, you have the small oval shaped variant, and you also have the filamentous form, the much larger filamentous form, where the fungus transforms into the shape of a filament. So there's a small oval form that exists and a larger filament form that exists. So the researchers at Hyderabad who have studied fungal diseases infections both in humans and as well as in plants, they have come to a conclusion that fungal metabolism is something that we should target through medicines. Instead of targeting the gene networks, trying to break up the genetic network, it's much more efficient to curb fungal infections because they are quite resistant to your traditional lines of treatment. So, targeting fungal metabolism is seen as a more effective way of containing fungal infections. Because, see, when a fungus it essentially enters the body, right, it lodges itself in a niche area to a certain organ or a tissue to start growing. And usually, when the initial infection starts, it's in the form of a small oval shape. But once inside the body, it faces a lot of difficult conditions, like the temperature fluctuations will be there. It may not get sufficient nutrition, right? And it will have to compete with other microbes which are already present in that organism, in the infected organism. So this is where the fungi transforms into the filament form, the large elongated filament form. So during the course of this metabolism, where it is breaking down the sugars, right? Fungi basically survive through the process of glycolysis. They break down the sugars, and that becomes the primary source of energy for the fungus. So, targeting this metabolic process is the best way to prevent the further growth of the fungal molds. So, further research is establishing this fact that targeting the gene networks will not be efficient or effective enough. Targeting the metabolism, basically starving the fungus, preventing it from breaking down sugars and feeding itself. This will be the most effective route to kill the fungus, and this could be the weakest point to break the chain of fungal infections. And that's something which has come out from this new research from Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. Next, on the supplement page, there's a very important topic for art and culture and society. So please make a quick note of this topic. In Telangana, Asia's largest tribal congregation is taking place, called the Medaram Jatara, also known as the Samaka Saralamma Mahajatra. It's a tribal festival which is rooted in Koya tribal traditions. It is celebrated in a biennial event which is held once in 2 years, the biennial festival. It takes place in the Ettur Nagaram Wildlife Sanctuary in the Mulugu district of Telangana, where all the tribes of the nearby region they aggregate and come together, making it Asia's largest tribal congregation. So the festival it pays tribute to goddess Saralamma and Samakka. These are the tribal goddesses who are worshipped by the Koya tribes of the region, right? And it brings all the tribes from Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka as well. It's seen as the biggest tribal congregation and it's recognized as a state festival since 1998. So it is something which has relevance for the tribal states of India. It's a festival rooted in ancient Koya tribal tradition where the tribal priests they worship goddess Samaka and Sarlama, and it's also called the Medaram Jatara. Coming to the last topic for today, the country of Nigeria is in news. In Nigeria, the country is known for internal conflicts and clashes. There's a particular state called the Benue State that you can see here in the map. Nigeria is a key West African country, a very important partner for India as well. In this part of Nigeria, you have the Benue province, which is affected by very deep rooted communal conflicts between the Muslims and the Christians. So, fresh clashes have broken out here between the ethnic Fulani herders. They are a nomadic herding community who are all Muslims. They often have clashes with the Christian farmers as they fight over land, resources, and water. This is a long standing conflict. It's not just about the fight for land and resources, it's a ethnic come communal conflict which often takes place in the Benue state of Nigeria. Now, such conflicts in Africa has been a favorite topic for UPSC in prelims. So please be aware of the location, what is the root cause, the basic details is more than sufficient. So with this, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope the session was useful and insightful. If you benefited, please press the like button, share your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.